Did you know there's a group of 4 chords that can play thousands of different songs on guitar and have been used in popular music over the past 100 years? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you 4 chords you can use to play thousands of songs, and at the end of the video, I'm going to even tell you what the songs are and how it all works. So what are these 4 different chords and how does it all work? Well, these chords are part of what we call a chord progression, and a chord progression is just what makes up a song. Now, this specific chord progression is 1, 5, 6, 4, and you can apply this to all different guitar chords. So you could start out on a C major chord and apply this formula, or a G major chord and apply this formula, and you can use it on all these different chords. If that's confusing, don't worry about it and just learn the chords that I'm going to show you today. So let's get into it. The first chord we're going to learn is a C major chord, and this one's super simple. To make it, take your 3rd finger and go to the 3rd fret of the 5th string. So go to the highest string and count 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we're going to go to the 3rd fret, and these are what we call frets. So this would be your 1st fret, 2nd fret, 3rd fret. It's just behind the metal part of what we call the fret. So you're going to take your 3rd finger, go to the 3rd fret of the 5th string. If you pluck this, it should sound like this. Make sure to try to curl your fingertip and have your thumb behind the neck as well. Now let's add in the next note. So take your 2nd finger and go to the 2nd fret of the 4th string. So count up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then go to the 2nd fret. Make sure you're holding down your 3rd finger as well. Don't take your 3rd finger off, hold it down because that's important for later. Then lastly, you're going to take your 1st finger and you're going to go to the 1st fret of the 2nd string. So once again, 3rd finger, 3rd fret, 5th string, 1, 2, 3. 2nd finger, 2nd fret, 4th string. Then 1st finger, 1st fret of the 2nd string. And you want to make sure your fingertips are curled so you can hear all the different notes. So now we're going to strum this so you make sure that you actually have it right. Take your pick, and if you've never held a pick before, I recommend trying to have a strong grip on it. Don't hold it too tight. The main thing is you don't hold it sort of like this. The main thing is you don't hold it kind of vertically. I recommend kind of having more of a horizontal grip, but just try to see what's comfortable for you. Now, when you strum, make sure you're not strumming like this down. You want to strum, it's more in your wrist than it is in your whole arm. Don't just move your whole arm. It's more just in your wrist. Experiment and see what feels comfortable for you. So place down that C chord. Once again, if you need one more look at it, here it is. 3rd finger, 3rd fret, 5th string, 2nd finger, 2nd fret on the 4th string, 1st finger, 1st fret on the 2nd string. And now we're going to strum it. So take your pick, go to the 5th string. Don't go to your 6th, go to your 5th. And strum that down. It should sound like this. So that is your C major chord. Now you might be wondering, Andrew, why aren't we strumming this low 6th string when we actually play this chord? And the reason for that is because it's actually not part of the chord. There's a music theory reason behind it where you're only strumming the notes that are part of the chord. But just keep that in mind as you're going through it. All right, the next chord we're going to learn is called the G major. Let's take a closer look at it. So here we have it, G major. What you're going to do is your 2nd finger is going to go to the 3rd fret of the 6th string. So once again, your 6th string is going to be the lowest string, and then these are what we call our frets. So go to the 3rd fret. 1, 2, 3. Should sound like this. And once you've done that, you're going to take your 1st finger, and your 1st finger is going to go to the 2nd fret of the 5th string. So if you're just plucking the bottom 2 notes, 6th string, 5th string. And then lastly, you're going to go to the 3rd fret of the 1st string. So you have this, make sure to hold that down. Then I recommend taking your 3rd finger and going to the 3rd fret of the 1st string. Now some people might want to use their pinky here. You can do this, or you can do this. Now this one's difficult. You really want to make sure you curl your fingertips as much as possible. Now, just a little side note, there is another way to play the G chord that is very common, where people actually play 2 notes instead of 1 on the higher strings. So what I mean is instead of using just 3 fingers, you're going to use 4. And you can do this by, once again, keeping this the same, 2nd finger, 3rd fret, 6th string, 1st finger, 2nd fret, 5th string, but then having your 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string and your pinky on the 3rd fret of the first string. And then when you strum this, you want to make sure you strum all 6 guitar strings. Okay, so far you have 2 different chords. So work on practicing these a little bit. Just go C, take your hand off, think about it, G. Try to get it sounding as clear as possible. The way you're gonna get it sounding clear is by having your thumb behind the neck, your fingertips curled, and by applying the right amount of pressure. If you're not applying any pressure, it's gonna sound like this. You won't be able to hear any of the notes, but if you're applying too much pressure, it's gonna hurt your fingers, which brings me to another point, which is if you're having pain in your hands, that's normal when you're first starting with chords, but don't overdo it if you need some time, you need some breaks. That's okay, because you're gonna develop what we call calluses on your hand over time, which is gonna make it easier to play this. Okay, enough talking. Let's get into the 3rd chord. Here we have the A minor chord. So to make it A minor chord, your 2nd finger goes to the 2nd fret of the 4th string, 3rd finger goes to the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. So we have this so far. And then lastly, your 1st finger goes to the 1st fret of the 2nd string. So you can see this one sounds a little more sad, and we're going to get into why in a second. But let's just play that note by note. So 4th string, let's pluck that. It should sound like this. 3rd string should sound like this. And then your 2nd string should sound like this. And when you strum that A minor chord, you want to make sure that you strum 5th string down. And you can see that because it has the X on the 6th string there. This brings me to a little point, which is why does this sound a little more sad versus the major chord? And that's because minor chords kind of have a little more sad sound. The major chords sound a little more upbeat, a little more happy. Minor sounds a little more sad. Now, the reason for this is just the distance between the notes in the chord. There's just one little difference in minor chords. We're not going to get into the music theory, but just know there is a little music theory difference with minor chords versus major chords. It's actually just one note. And I can kind of give an example with that A minor chord. So here's what an A minor chord looks like. And then here's what an A major chord looks like. You can see just that one note makes a big, big difference. Now we're going to get into the last chord. It's a little more tricky, so I'm going to go over a few ways you could actually play this chord. So this last chord is an F chord, an F major chord. And this is tricky because you actually lay your 1st finger on multiple guitar strings. So instead of just having your fingertip curled, hitting one note, you're going to be holding it on all 6 guitar strings. Now, if you haven't played bar chords before, I wouldn't recommend doing what we call full bar chords, which is when you have it on all 6 strings first. I'd recommend doing half bar chords, which is a little easier, and I'm going to get into that in a few minutes, but I'd recommend trying it out first and seeing if you can do it. So to make an F major chord, what you're going to do is you're going to take your 1st finger and you're going to bar all 6 strings on that 1st fret. You want to make sure you're not sideways, it's as flat as possible. Take your 1st finger and put it on the 1st fret, all 6 strings. So try to just strum all the notes at first. Try to get it as clean as possible. Now there's certain kind of crevices in your finger when you're actually putting it on the string, and those parts are gonna not come out as clean. So you wanna make sure you're trying to apply pressure evenly across the entire bar. Okay, once you're comfortable with that, we're gonna add in the notes. And one kind of cool thing about the notes we're gonna add is it's a similar shape to that A minor chord. Now it's obviously we're gonna use different fingers, but it's a similar shape. So have that bar on the 1st fret on all 6 strings, then take your 3rd finger, go to the 3rd fret of the 5th string, take your pinky, go to the 3rd fret of the 4th string. You want to make sure your fingertips are as curled as possible too. It's really important when it comes to this bar chord. And then lastly, take your 2nd finger and go to the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. So this is what we have. Now you're really going to have to kind of move your hand around and see how you can get the notes coming out clean. And the way you get it sounding clean is by applying pressure only where you need to. So one kind of thing to talk about when it comes to this bar chord is since we have 3 fingers down here, we don't need to apply pressure with the bar on these specific strings because there's no need to, because it doesn't matter how hard you push here, the note's going to be hit here anyways. So with this bar, since we have these 3 fingers down, only apply pressure here and to the notes that are actually going to be hit. If that's tricky, don't worry, because now I'm going to go over a simpler way to play that F chord. Let's get into it. Okay, this is the next way to play that F chord. It sounds like this. And although it looks completely different, it's actually the same full bar chord. We're just only playing the top 4 strings like this. We're just using different fingering to make it easy. So first off, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our first finger and we're gonna bar the first and second string on the first fret. Make sure your thumb's not hanging over like this. Make sure it's behind the neck. And then work on just getting this bar clean. And the way you're gonna get this sounding clean is by applying pressure right before the metal part of the fret and by making sure your finger's flat. Make sure it's not like this. I've seen a lot of people do this. You wanna make sure it's horizontal. See how it's almost aligned with the metal part of the fret. Okay, once you've done that, next move on to adding in your second finger to the second fret of the third string. Work on just playing that, and then lastly, do all 4 once you get comfortable with that. So you can practice that, work on this first if you're a beginner, and then you can move on to the more difficult one later on. Okay, those are the 4 different chords. We're gonna go over them one more time, and then I'm gonna talk about how you can actually use them to play thousands of songs on guitar. So one more time, let's review each chord, starting out with the C major. All right, here we have the C major chord. So to make your C major chord, your third finger goes to the 3rd fret of the 5th string, second finger, 2nd fret on the 4th string, and your first finger on the 1st fret of the 2nd string. And when you strum this chord, you wanna make sure you strum the 5th string down. Next is the G major chord, and I said there's a bunch of different ways you can play this one, but you wanna make sure your second finger's on the 3rd fret of the 6th string, first finger's on the 2nd fret of the 5th string, and then with your third finger, put it on the 3rd fret of the 1st string. You can also use your 4th, see what's easier. And you can also do the other combination where you use your 3rd and 4th fingers together. And when you strum this one, you wanna make sure you strum all 6 guitar strings. Okay, next we had the A minor chord. Now to make an A minor chord, your second finger goes to the 4th string, 2nd fret, third finger goes to the 2nd fret of the 3rd string, and then your first finger goes to the 1st fret of the 2nd string. And when you strum this one, you wanna make sure you strum 5 down. Now there is a shortcut to make this chord as well, and you just take that C major chord, the first chord we learned, that C major, and then all you would do is just move your third finger to the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. So this is C major. You can easily make an A minor just by moving. Okay, lastly, let's go over the 2 different types of F major chords. So the first was that full bar chord, and this is only if you've been playing a while. I wouldn't recommend beginners do this. Take your first finger, lay it on all 6 guitar strings, and then take your third finger, go to the 3rd fret of the 5th string, 4th finger on the 3rd fret of the 4th string, and then your second finger on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. Now, if you're struggling with that, there's an easier way you can play it, which only involves the top 4 guitar strings, like I talked about. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your third finger, go to the 3rd fret of the 4th string, second finger on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string, and then you wanna take your first finger and lay it on the 1st fret of the 1st and 2nd string. You wanna make sure, I see a lot of people do this, their fingers kind of come this way. Try to keep your fingers as horizontal as possible, keeping your 3rd and 2nd fingertips curled. So everything together is like this. You can see it kind of sounds like a common chord progression because it is. Now, just with these 4 chords, like I said, there's thousands of songs you can play, and on the screen right now, I am just going to put a list of all the songs you could play with these chords. For example, some of the songs that use this chord progression are Don't Stop Believin', Take Me Home Country Roads by John Denver, Let It Be by the Beatles, No Woman No Cry Bob Marley, Take On Me, When I Come Around by Green Day, Africa by Toto, Bon Jovi, It's My Life, Poker Face by Lady Gaga, and literally thousands of songs out there. There's actually a whole Wikipedia page dedicated to all the songs you can play with this chord progression. Now, the only trouble you might have in the future is sometimes the key might be different. So although songs use the same chord progression, sometimes they might not start on the C major chord, they might start, let's say, on the A major or the G major. So what would you do in that situation? Well, you can always learn those chords, but you can also use what we call a capo and change the key. So let's say there was a song and it wasn't in C major, starting with the C major chord, but it was in C sharp major. Well, that's an easy example, but in that situation, you could use what we call a capo, and you can just put it on the first fret. And then suddenly, you can play the same chords, but now you're in the key of C sharp major, and you could do the exact same thing all the way up the guitar neck. You just might have to do some thinking when it comes to the music theory. So that would be C sharp, and now you're at D, and now you're at D sharp, E, F. You could go all the way up and play, get every single key, but although you might not want to play up here. In that situation, you might want to transpose and play it maybe in a different key. If you're jamming with the friends, you can still just change the way the melody is saying in a lower key, or you could learn the new chords as well. So that's it. Those are the 4 chords that can play thousands of songs on guitar. If you're interested in learning all your major and minor chords at the same time as learning common strumming patterns and improving your rhythm skill, then I want you to check out our program, Strumming in 20 Days. You can check out the comments below. Hundreds of people around the world have used this to improve their strumming skill on guitar. Now, one cool thing about this program is you're going to actually learn a bunch of different rhythm patterns. And what you can do with these patterns is just add in different left-hand chords and create your own songs and really experiment with that. So check that out in the comments, and you can actually join that program below. So I hope you enjoyed this video. You can use those 4 chords to play literally thousands of songs on guitar.